there everyone, it's me Aaron, and this is Comic Class, the show on this channel every single week where we just geek out about comic books. And you know, over the past couple months we've really been diving into all the X-Men news that's been getting released. With every issue of House of X and Power of X, it felt like there was some big revelation happening that we had to come in here and discuss. Something that was changing the face of the X-Men forever, and if we didn't know what was changing it for sure, we sure had a ton of theories about it. Almost all of which were wrong. I'll admit that one. That's all on me. I'll take the blame for that one. But now that those two series have wrapped up, I gotta admit, it feels kind of good to actually have a break from all the X-Men news. I mean, you can't come in here and just cover the X-Men every single week. You need a break. You need some downtime. Downtime officially over. Yes, I promised you guys that as soon as the final issue number 1 of the Dawn of X relaunch was released, we were going to come in here and discuss each of these brand new X-Men comics. And this week, Fallen Angels number 1 came out, and that was the last one. That was the one that we were all waiting on, because now that that's out, all 6 of these brand new X-Men comics have been released. So today we're going to take a look at each of them individually. However, before we discuss them individually, I kind of want to talk about them overall. I kind of want to talk about my feelings towards all these issues, sort of as a whole collective, about what it says about these new X-Men books, because I was actually kind of surprised when I read these brand new X-Men books in just how not surprised I was by them. And I know that sounds bad, I know that sounds like a negative, I'm not being negative on that one, hear me out. What I mean by that is that with House of X and Power of X, almost every single issue of that was something big and crazy and just changing the entire landscape of the X-Men. So I kind of went into these books thinking, oh my goodness, now we're going to have 6 books all doing that exact same thing. No, we didn't. We did not get books that were coming in here and just changing everything forever. You know what we got instead? X-Men books. We got 6 brand new X-Men series. And again, that is not a negative. That's what these new X-Men series are supposed to be. X-Men series. Feels like I shouldn't have to say that, but I did need to realize that. I had to rewire my expectations going into these books, because as I was reading these, it slowly hit me, oh yeah, House of X and Power of X, the entire point of those was to come in here to the current disheveled mansion that was the X-Men's home, knock down all the walls, and do like a complete home and garden renovation on that entire thing. Just have something completely new sprout up. Wow, I did not say home and garden as a joke, because they're all living on one giant plant. I didn't mean that, but wow, that wordplay works. Okay, sorry, it's rare that you can actually realize that you walked backwards into a pun. Anywho, yeah, those books were all about coming in here and just changing the entire landscape of the X-Men, and now the landscape has changed. House of X and Power of X were supposed to come in here and change the status quo. Status quo has changed. So now we have books springing out of this new status quo. And once I realized that, I was able to start enjoying these a lot more, because I didn't go into them going, where's the kaboom? They were supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom. So yes, now that I realize these issues are not House of X and Power of X, they're just brand new X-Men books, I feel like I got a little bit more of respect for them. Because the first couple of these that I did read, I did kind of go through them like, yeah, okay, that's nice. And then big crazy surprise happening right now. No, okay, that's not happening. Alright, whatever. But now that I'm actually looking at them as just series, focusing on these characters that anyone out there can jump into and start reading, yeah, I actually did enjoy these a lot more. But one of the reasons that I enjoyed it, and honestly the biggest compliment that I have to give all these brand new X-Men comics, is that I don't know if I have ever seen this wide of a variety in tones in a collection of X-Men books. Because you've got the X-Men book. Alright, that's kind of like an X-Men book. That feels like Jonathan Hickman's X-Men book. That feels like a continuation of House of X and Power of X. Okay, so you got that one going on there. Then you've got New Mutants. That is a crazy road trip through space. That's just kind of meant to be a comedy almost. Okay, cool. That's not like that other X-Men book. So what's next? Then you got Marauders over here. That is the adventures of Kitty Pryde as a pirate going around the world saving mutants from people who are still hunting them because they hate and fear them. Alright, that's again completely different from the other 2 books. But then you've got like Fallen Angels. That's a very noir, dark series. Then you've got X-Force, which is almost like a political thriller almost, which I know is a weird sentence for anybody out there who has not read the current X-Force series. But hang on, stick with me, we're gonna get to that one eventually. And then you've got Excalibur, which is just a straight up magic series. And not magic like Doctor Strange, where it's like, I make Spidey fingers, and then all of a sudden purple energy waves come out of my hand and punch people. No, it is like indie magic. It's like Wicked and Divine style magic, which is completely different from those other 5 series out there. And I love this. I love that right now we have 6 different X-Men books out there. And yeah, if you just kind of want the same thing in all your X-Men books, like you're just a huge, massive fan of this part of the X-Men, so you kind of just want to buy 6 books that are kind of like that, yeah, you might be a little bit disappointed. But if you want to relaunch an entire line of X-Men books in a way that will make sure that everybody out there gets at least one book that they can be really into, this was smart. And I think that's what they were trying to do, and I'm actually really impressed with how well they did it. Alright, we're going to do these in chronological order. So the very first book that came out was Jonathan Hickman's X-Men book, and as I said, that one was kind of sort of the continuation of what he set up in House of X and Power of X, because while all the other series out there are kind of focusing on specific things or specific characters and their adventures, the X-Men book is going to focus on Cyclops and his team, which is kind of meant to be the main team of Krakoa, the main team of mutants out there. They are the X-Men. All these other teams, not really X-Men, or just mutants having their own adventures here on the island of Krakoa. So I went into this series going, okay, this one's going to continue all the stuff that was being set up in House of X and Power of X, and as I said, yes, it does. However, there was something else that I had to realize, which is I've always said about Jonathan Hickman, I eventually love Jonathan Hickman stuff, but I never really love it in the beginning because Jonathan Hickman takes his time to set stuff up. He takes a good long while to just slowly put this character here, that character there, introduce this element over here. But in House of X and Power of X, he didn't do that. House of X and Power of X, he just came in here and just flipped the entire table over and said, alright, I ain't got time for that. We gotta do some stuff with the X-Men now. So he just came in here and just started changing stuff left and right with big, huge, massive ideas just being thrown right in your face. It was almost like we just skipped right to the end of a Jonathan Hickman storyline. Where it's like, yeah, we don't have time for that crazy build-up. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. And then when I went into X-Men #1, oh, we're kind of back to classic Hickman. We're kind of back to that Hickman who takes his time setting everything up. So even though this was being written by the same guy who did House of X and Power of X, I still had to kind of change the way that I was looking at this. I had to look at this like, okay, we're no longer in for the wild ride. We're in for the steep climb uphill. We're in for the long journey that will get us to that big, glorious view at the top of that mountain. So I think that if you look at the book like that, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Because at the end of issue #1 of the X-Men, by the way, this has been out for a couple weeks now, so I will be going ahead and spoiling this. At the end of this whole thing, you cut back to those people who were building the Sentinels from House of X and Power of X, and you reveal, oh yeah, we're just getting started, and also we have begun our plans to start making the post-humans, the humans who you actually need to be worrying about. But they reveal that even with Master Mold gone, they have another ace up their sleeve, the Imkron Crystal. And I was so happy to see the Imkron Crystal return, because I feel like for the past decade, we've just been getting the Infinity Stones in Marvel Comics. Which understandably why, I mean they've kind of been a big deal in the movies. So yeah, alright, fine. You got this whole thing, you got several movies about gathering up the Infinity Gems, so you want to bring them into the comics, focus on them a little bit more. Cool. But I'm glad that someone at Marvel is reminding their audiences we have other magic, big, powerful items out there. So I was happy to see that end up returning. But the main focus of this issue was sort of just setting up Cyclops. There wasn't some big crazy thing that ended up happening that made you go, oh my goodness, we need to come back because there's a big cliffhanger ending here. No, it was more just kind of about going, okay, let's just kind of chill with the Summers family. Which I have to come in here and say, when they came in here in House of X and Power of X, and they revealed the ruling government of Krakoa, and they revealed it was ruled by 4 houses, and each of the houses was named after seasons, and the X-Men house was the Summers house. It did not even occur to me for a second that, oh yeah, because Cyclops, leader of the X-Men, is named Scott Summers, which I don't think that's why the X-Men in this universe ended up picking the name Summers. I don't think they picked the Summers house for themselves because, oh yeah, it'll be a tribute to Scott. Scott will get a big kick out of this. You know, Scott, he doesn't really say he's happy about things, but he'll get like a little smirk when no one's looking. Yeah, he'll enjoy that. Yeah, I don't think that's why the X-Men picked it within this universe, but you know that's why Hickman picked it for them. I absolutely love that wordplay because I didn't even realize it at all. Although I will say it is a very weird coincidence that the X-Men right now, like the main X-Men living in the Summers house up on the moon overlooking all the Earth, is pretty much just made up of members of Scott Summers' family. It's Scott, it's his son from the future, it's his daughter from an alternate future, it's his ex-wife, it's his dad, which his dad's just kind of there visiting, and then it's his two brothers. And also Wolverine for some reason, because you gotta have Wolverine in there, which, okay. Kids, anyone under a certain age, skip ahead now by a little bit, but I have to address this because everyone is talking about this. I saw so many people on Twitter, I saw so many people on YouTube, I saw so many people all around the internet discussing this. The fact that Jean Grey, Wolverine, and Scott Summers, Cyclops, the people who have been in one of the biggest love triangles in comic book history for the longest time, not since Archie and Betty and Veronica, they all live like right next to each other, and there's like a few lines in here that kind of wink and nod at something. I saw so many people saying, oh my goodness, do you think that they're like all in like a big 3-person relationship? Do you think they're all like basically like, you know, no longer fighting with each other, but now they're all together in one big 3-person relationship? No. I didn't get that feeling at all from this. I thought it was just, yeah, we know that we all used to like, we know that Jean Grey, you know, kind of like has a thing for Logan, and she was married to Scott, and those two guys hate each other, so we're just gonna play around with that. I didn't get that feeling at all from this book, and when I first saw people discussing this, I was like, okay, that's just, you know, that's just the shippers out there. That's just the people out there that if any characters stand next to each other for long enough, they're going to assume that they're in a romantic relationship. But I saw so many people jumping at this, and all I could think was, is there some subtext to this that I am completely missing? I'm going to cut that line of thinking off right there before I get into even weirder territory with it, but I'll just summarize by saying, no, I don't think that's what they were hinting at in there. So as I said, not a whole lot happened in this issue because the entire point of this issue was just to set up what Cyclops was doing and Cyclops' new status quo and where he's hanging out up there on the moon with his family. Okay, they did a pretty decent job with that, and I have to admit, I did really enjoy seeing all these characters bounce off each other, which is, to me, the most important thing about writing a team book. The interactions between the characters. And I thought these characters actually did have some pretty good interaction with each other. And the relationship between Wolverine and Vulcan, I absolutely love their exchanges in there. Although I do have to admit, it's been a while since I've read anything with Vulcan in there. And really the only stuff that I read with Vulcan was Deadly Genesis and the Shi'ar Kree War, or Shi'ar Inhuman War, whatever it's called. So basically, I read his first appearance, and then I read his death. So maybe there was a lot of stuff in the middle there that I completely missed. In fact, I'm sure that there was. But he did not sound in the books that I read the way that he sounded in here. He sounded like a completely different character to me, because here, he's kind of talking about, oh yes, my burning power and my burning desire, and yes, the burning energy within me. He talked almost like an anime character. He talked like some guy out of Promare, okay? It was so bizarre to me to see him talking that way. However, those were my thoughts when I first read this issue. But as time has gone along and the other issues came out, almost every single one of these issues is all about a team of the X-Men, and there's always one bad guy joining them on that team, and none of the bad guys sound the way that I would expect them to sound. And I get that feeling like, hey man, no weird conspiracies on this one. I know that I've been pointing to a lot of these characters going, they don't sound the way that they normally sound. Something is up with them. And yeah, Cyclops definitely sounds way more strict in this issue. He sounds a little bit more Magneto-y than I always remember Cyclops, but then again, he had kind of been leaning in that direction for a while. But with the villains, I don't think it's any weird conspiracy. I don't think that they're being mind controlled by Charles Xavier, by Mr. Sinister. I think they're all just kind of like, listen, man, we were always fighting you guys because we just never had a place to belong. Now we got a place, so all right, I'm fine. I can just chill. I can just sit back and just be okay right now. So I'm hoping that's the reason why. Otherwise, this might again be one of those things where, you know, there maybe is some kind of a conspiracy about why all the villains are now suddenly cool with working with the X-Men, or why all the X-Men are cool with working with the villains. Listen, I did all the crazy theory stuff during House of X and Power of X. We ain't doing that this time around. Point is, X-Men #1, pretty good introduction. Pretty good summation of where these characters are right now, why they're on these teams, what they plan on doing, and there is that cliffhanger there at the end, so it's a pretty good start, but you do have to realize that this is Hickman going slow now, taking his time. So if you're willing to stick around for like 20, 30 issues before you look back and go, oh my goodness, everything was set up from the very beginning, then yeah, this is a great start. But for a lot of other people out there who aren't okay with waiting that long for stuff to get introduced like that, you might just want to trade wait this one. Next up is Marauders, which I saw a lot of people saying was their personal favorite of all these brand new Dawn of X books, and I'll admit it might be my #2. We'll get to my #1 way later down the line. But yeah, I actually really did enjoy this one because I feel like out of all the House of X and Power of X books, out of all the Dawn of X books, this one kind of gave me that House of X and Power of X feel the most because it raised questions. It raised a lot of questions that I had to look at and go, oh, what could that possibly mean? And I enjoy that. It was good to kind of have that back for a moment. Because what this book is about is that Kitty Pryde, you know, all the X-Men out there, they're all going through these Krakoa portals so that way they can go to Krakoa and be free and live with all the other mutants. Kitty Pryde tries to enter, can't do it. On that cover, you see she's got a black eye and a busted nose. It's because she just walked right into a wall. She just walked right into Krakoa's big teleporting thing and just bam, she can't go through. And nobody knows why. Nobody knows why Krakoa isn't letting her through, so she had to steal a boat. And then she sailed all the way to Krakoa, but Emma Frost reached out to her and said, listen, you are in a very unfortunate situation, but there's a lot of people out there in unfortunate situations, and considering how you are at the moment and how a lot of them are, you might be able to help each other. There's a lot of mutants out there in the world who can't use the Krakoa portals. Not for the same reasons that you can't, but more of just their government isn't allowing them to. They don't have a way of easily getting to where we set the portals up, and they want to come and join us. So we need someone to take a team and actually sail them here to our land of Krakoa. We need someone to sail them to freedom. So since you're in that situation, I choose you. And honestly, I love this idea because it plays into the new status quo of the X-Men, where they have their own island nation, they have their own government, they're working with other governments out there. It is a brand new day for the X-Men, and this book is all about Kitty Pryde having to get mutants to the brand new island set up just for them. But at the same time, it plays into all the classic elements of the X-Men. The whole we're hunted down because we're hated and feared. This book is all about Kitty Pryde going to places where the old status quo for the X-Men still exists so that they can bring those mutants to the new status quo for the X-Men. I think this is the perfect balance between the old X-Men and the new X-Men. Also, you can tell from reading this first issue that this book is going to have a very global tone to it. They are going around the entire planet to different countries to find mutants to help them escape their countries to get to Krakoa. And I love that. I think that is a great idea because when it comes to the X-Men being hated and feared for being different, that was always supposed to be a metaphor for people in the real world who are hated and feared for being different. And you can tell from the nations that they talk about in this first issue, yeah, they're going to be going to a couple of countries out there that are not really known for their tolerance. So I appreciate that this book is also going to get a little bit political with this. I mean, not in a very direct way, not coming in here and just going, let's talk about the actual inhumane stuff going on in Russia right now. But they do go to Russia, so it is kind of like this book is just going, hey man, maybe you guys want, look some of this stuff up yourself, maybe do a little research on your own. They also give every single location that they go to a completely different feeling. And part of that comes down to the art, but part of it also comes down to the type of story that they're going to be doing, because there's a moment where they go to Taiwan and you see that there's this lady there saying that her husband went through one of the portals, but he never returned. And then Bishop goes up to her and says, listen, I'm from Krakoa. We have no record of your husband actually arriving on Krakoa, so that's going to be a mystery. When they're in Russia, that's just a big flat out brawl. When they're over here in Taiwan, it's like, oh shoot, okay. So are they maybe trying to cover this up, say that the mutants did something to her husband when actually they did something to that and there's all some big lie? Or did something actually happen to her husband? Did something go wrong in there? Ooh, spine-chilling mystery here with Detective Bishop. I always like Bishop when he's a detective. I feel like enough writers don't really play into that, but I always kind of enjoyed it when they really leaned into that. It looks like this book is going to be doing that. Now, I do have a couple of issues with this very first issue. I need to come up with a different word other than issue when I talk about a problem with the book. And one of them is Pyro on the team. It was kind of funny how Pyro just popped up in there, because Kitty Pryde, she had to take her boat over to Russia in order to investigate what was happening over there. And Pyro just passed out. He just decided to take a nap on the boat and he was just there. Okay, that's kind of funny. But you don't really give me like enough reason to really understand why Pyro is part of this team aside from just that. I mean, I pointed this out when we were talking about these books being announced. His power is fire. And he's gonna be on a boat surrounded by water. Seems like an odd choice. I feel like he got put on this book just simply because they thought it would be funny to have Pyro on here. Just because he is this crazy Australian stereotype, so they just thought it would be funny to put him in this series. Okay, I trust Jerry Dugan to write some funny dialogue for him, but yeah, I didn't buy from this first issue any real reason why he actually has to be on this team. Everybody else in here, I looked at and went, okay, cool, I absolutely get why they're on this team. Pyro, I'm still kind of iffy on. I still don't really know. Also, another problem I have with this book, I still don't understand why it's called the Marauders. Kitty Pryde at the end of this says, hey, if you can't get to Krakoa, the Marauders are here for you. And at the end of this, you've got Storm there saying, I'm not really a fan of the fact that you picked the term Marauders for us. And Kate was like, yeah, I was on the spot and I couldn't think of anything else, but, you know, we can't really call ourselves the X-Men because that ties us too closely into Krakoa. If we get busted, we can at least say, hey, we're working against Professor X. We can at least say we weren't approved by Professor X if we don't use the term X-Men. That's good. But like, X-Factor, Ecstatic, anything even not without an X in there, it feels so weird that they picked a name of one of their old villains for the name of this team. It doesn't quite work for me. It's just, they did not have a good enough reason to call them the Marauders. Also, one last little problem I have with this book. At the very end of this issue, Kitty Pryde says she doesn't want to be called Kitty Pryde anymore. She wants to be called Kate. That's understandable. I mean, she's not a little kid anymore. She's a grown woman now. If she wants to stop being called Kitty, absolutely understandable. You want me to call Kate? Makes perfect sense. But have you ever looked at someone and just went, there's no way that's going to stick? That is not going to stick at all. Yeah, I kind of looked at this and just went, good on you for trying to change things up. I kind of know it's not going to happen though. And that's really a shame. I kind of wish that they had just gone with Caitlin rather than just Kate. Simply because then you still get like the 2-syllable like little naming pattern. Kitty Pryde, Caitlin Pryde. I don't know. I kind of wish that they had just gone with that. It would make the transition a little bit easier. But honestly, that's my only problem with Kitty Pryde in this issue. I know that a lot of people out there look at Kitty Pryde just tearing through these Russian through these Russian soldiers and just said, oh my goodness, Kitty Pryde is a monster now. She is just a savage, crazed killer right now. First off, she doesn't kill anyone in this book. Pyro maybe almost does. Those people aren't going to be the same again. And I do kind of feel like they should have turned to Pyro and just be like, hey, I don't know, like just go for the feet or something now. Like don't fully engulf people in flames. Yeah, I kind of have a problem that nobody turned to Pyro after that and was just like, yeah, man, too much. Take it down a notch. But when it comes to Kitty herself, I did not have a problem at all with the way that Kitty Pryde was fighting in here. I'm sorry, Kate Pryde was fighting in here. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that at all because like there's a moment where she shoots someone in the knee. and then there's a moment where she takes the gun, makes it intangible, puts it inside the legs of 2 other people, so now it just like takes out their knees. Yeah, man, I was okay with that, and I know a lot of people out there are going to say, well, that's not Kitty Pryde at all. I'm okay with it because, yeah, it is. Kitty Pryde used to be an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Kitty Pryde was trained to be a ninja by Wolverine. Do you think he was training her to fight with like one of those reverse blade swords like Rurouni Kenshin? No. Kitty Pryde's been around. She's done some stuff in her time. Kitty Pryde is kind of a badass when she has to be. And I looked at this and just went, yeah, that fits to me. That absolutely fits. So yeah, I didn't really have a problem with that. That did not seem out of character in any way to me. Next up is Excalibur, and this is the book that is trying to reestablish a brand new status quo for Betsy Braddock, because Betsy Braddock for the longest time had been Psylocke, but now she has been separated from Psylocke and she's back to being her own person, and thank God for that, because I will get into this more in a moment. But Psylocke for many years now has been a very problematic character. Again, we will discuss that a little bit more down the road. But I'm glad that now Psylocke is Psylocke and Betsy Braddock is Betsy Braddock, but they had to give Betsy Braddock a brand new name. So now she is the brand new Captain Britain, establishing this brand new Excalibur team. Cool, awesome, yeah. You want to make Betsy Braddock something new, something that could actually stick? Captain Britain. That would absolutely fit for her. So what happens in this book is that the X-Men have tried to open a gateway to Camelot, but Morgan Le Fay has decided to put a stop to that, and now she is going to try and wage a war on the mutants. So now you've got all these different mutants, such as Apocalypse, and Rogue, and Gambit, and Jubilee, and a bunch of characters who really don't feel like they should be inside of a magic book. It's kind of weird, but yeah, you've got all these characters in here, and they're going to try and stop her. And that is the first kind of problem I have with this issue. I'll go ahead and let you guys know right now. This is easily my least favorite of the books. And I hate saying that. I hate saying that because Marcus Toe is working on this book, and Marcus Toe is an amazing artist. I'm so glad that he is working on a series again over at Marvel. But yeah, this was honestly my least favorite. However, disclaimer. Big fat disclaimer in here. As I said, every single one of these brand new X-Men books have a very different tone to them. They feel like they're aimed at a completely different audience. This book is aimed at people who are fans of, for lack of a better term, indie magic. You know, books like Wicked and Divine, or a bunch of the other indie books over at Image Comics that really do focus on magic. I'm not a fan of that. I mean, every single year when we do our top 100 comics of the year list, you'll see books like Wicked and Divine or Monstrous up there on my top 100, because I can look at them and objectively say, yes, these are well-written books. For the audience out there that likes these books, these are books that are made absolutely for you. But I'm not in that audience. I am not in that audience that really enjoys those types of magical series, and this seems like it's trying to make an X-Men book that's going to be one of those types of magical series. So even though this is easily my least favorite of the bunch, a lot of that comes from just personal bias. Just comes from me saying this is not my type of book. But as I was reading the introductions, as I was reading the big cliff notes there at the beginning of the page that they put in all these brand new X-Men books that talk about the new status quo of the X-Men and give you that kind of history lesson on these characters, it was coming in here and talking about how the X-Men are tied to magic and how the X-Men reestablishing Krakoa and this brand new nation for mutants is affecting the world of magic. And I could look at that and go, if you are into this type of magic, this is right up your alley. You can tell just from these openings, this book is absolutely nailing the tone that it is going for. It's just a tone that I don't really enjoy. However, there are several other problems I have with this book that I don't really know if it is my own personal bias on this one. I do think that it does kind of have some issues. The first one just simply being the roster. Betsy Braddock, perfect for an Excalibur book. Makes total sense. Apocalypse, oh man, you want to get someone from the mutant world, like a villain to pull in, who's kind of tied into magic? Apocalypse, that's a pretty big name. There's a couple of other ones you could have picked, but Apocalypse, not a bad pick. He should be on your starting roster. But then everyone else in here just kind of felt like they just wanted to have them in a book, so why not? Like Rogue and Gambit on a book about magic. That doesn't make sense to me. Jubilee on a book about magic makes even less sense to me. I mean, maybe if she was still a vampire, I could kind of see it, but she's not, so yeah, I just don't really get at all why she needs to be on this team. With Rogue and Gambit, I can at least look over at Gambit because he used to be a Horseman of Apocalypse and say, okay, well, for character dynamics, he's a good pick because you'll have him butting heads with Apocalypse, so that'll actually be kind of a cool thing to see in here. But yeah, that's really the only reason why I can kind of support Rogue and Gambit being on this team. It really kind of feels like they just said, okay, who do we want on team? Let's put them on team, even if they don't really fit being on this team at all. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of this lineup all that much. Second problem I have is that this issue, it kind of feels like there's a tie-in out there that I didn't read. A tie-in entirely about Morgan Le Fay. Because you've got Morgan Le Fay in there, and she's got her own, like, team of people that are worshiping her and trying to open up a gateway to her. The way that gets introduced, it feels like we already knew these characters, and it feels like their plan had already been set up in some other issue. It really feels like we just jumped middle of the way through a story. Like, something had already been building up, bam, we're right here. I really, honestly, I'm asking this, in all honesty, is Morgan Le Fay actually in some other comic book right now? Was this like an actual storyline that was being set up in some other book that I just didn't read about? Because they really do set this thing up like, yeah, man, that's just, just a thing that's happening right now. It's been going on. Have you not been reading about this? Yeah, we're right here now. Yeah, so it kind of has that tone to it of like, oh, I feel like maybe the writer had this story worked out in their head so well that they forgot the rest of us didn't know all the backstory on all this stuff. For example, at the very end of this issue, they kind of have sort of a cliffhanger. There's sort of a cliffhanger at the end of this thing, where one member of the people who is trying to summon up Morgan Le Fay, they end up leaving and then going over to some other team out there, and maybe that team does exist. Maybe they are part of the long history of the X-Men that I just don't know about. But it felt like that was supposed to be like some big dun 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 moment. I just looked at it like, what? Okay, sure. That means very little to me. Because I don't know who this character is that's betraying her old team, and I don't know who she's betraying them to. None of this really means anything to me. So yeah, this book, it wasn't bad. It definitely was not bad. And for the audience out there that this is aimed at, I think that there is a lot that they can pull from this. But for me personally, I just kind of found this one to be bland. Like, this was like straight down the middle, just whatever. Next up is New Mutants, and I'll be honest with you guys, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Because it feels like all the other books that were in the Dawn of X relaunch, they all had a purpose. They all had a reason for existing. But when it comes to New Mutants, this one's being co-written by Jonathan Hickman. It kind of feels like Jonathan Hickman just really likes the New Mutants, so he wanted to write the New Mutants. And you know something? That's okay. I'm totally fine with that. For two reasons. One, Jonathan Hickman did an amazing thing for the X-Men with House of X and Power of X. He came in here and got the entire world talking about the X-Men again. Great. Awesome. If he was able to do that, he has more than earned the right to go, listen, I like this one team under the X-Men, just let me work on that book. We've got all these other Dawn of X series coming out. I'm going to come in here, put my foot down, and claim that one of them has to be New Mutants, and I at least get to co-write it. You know what? He earned that. He absolutely earned that. If this just wants to be his pet project that he comes in here and goes, I just like these characters and I just want to see them on a big wacky adventure through space, great. Yay. Hooray for that. I mean, he's proven multiple times before he really likes these characters. He put Sunspot and Cannonball on the Avengers. And they were actually really good additions to the Avengers. So it's clear that he has a love for this team. So great. Let's just let him write this team. Let's just let him do it. Also, as I mentioned, all the other X-Men books feel like they had a purpose behind them. But this book, it feels like it was more just to be fun. Here's the thing about that. Just being fun is a purpose. That actually can just be the point of a book. If you just want to have characters who have a long backstory with each other, so they play off each other very well, and you want to have those characters now just go on a big crazy adventure through space, alright, that's totally fine. That is absolutely an okay thing to do with your own book. It is fine to have a book that is just there for laughs, just to enjoy reading the interactions between characters, just because it's a fun idea. That's what this book was. And I will say, I think that this series, out of all the other New Mutant series that have come out since the original New Mutant series, this one I feel like in issue number 1 did probably the best job of really establishing the long history that these characters have with each other. Like when they're all hanging out and just talking about coffee, it feels like they're just people who know each other. And I love that. I love that they were able to give this entire book that kind of a tone. And also, the artwork in here, superb. The artwork in here absolutely feels like it's an homage to the classic New Mutant artwork. The artwork in here being done by Rod Rice. Yeah, I think that he absolutely nailed that tone that this series is going for. There are some panels in there where you've got like Magic in a fight and she just gets this crazed look in her eye. Man, that reminded me of some of that old Bill Sienkiewicz art. Next up is the new X-Force series, and this one is being written by Benjamin Percy, and this is actually his first ongoing series that he's written for Marvel. Before this, he was primarily a DC guy. And reading this book, I can now come in here and say, Benjamin Percy loves evil organizations of dudes in suits and masks. That is kind of his thing that he goes to. Which, okay, fine, he's able to spice it up enough each time, because this has got some crazy new evil organization that has decided to set sights on Krakoa. They're going to be launching this big attack on Krakoa in order to try and take out Professor X. And X-Force in the past, it's always been kind of like the X-Men's Black Ops team, and that's taken on a different meaning depending on who's been writing the series. But a lot of time it was always like a, you know, behind closed doors kind of thing, or an under the table sort of thing where, yeah, we don't talk about that, it doesn't exist, it's not actually a thing. But now that the X-Men have their own government on their own nation, the X-Force doesn't really have that tone to it. The way that X-Force is set up in this issue, it feels a lot more like this was a political thriller. Like this was not some story about this team of Black Ops super soldiers going in there to fight these impossible odds. It felt more like a movie about someone going and attacking the White House, and now the Secret Service has to get the president out of there. That's what this felt like. It felt like that White House Down, or whatever that very average Gerard Butler film was. It feels like one of those types of movies where, you know, Wolverine and Beast, they're all just like trying to escort Professor X out of there as these soldiers are coming for him. It absolutely has that tone to me of, okay, this is some kind of the president is being hunted down by soldiers or by terrorists or a thing, and now it's up to the Secret Service to save him. That is what this issue felt like. And I like that, because it is 100% different from anything we have ever gotten from X-Force. But when you think about the new status quo of the X-Men, where the X-Men are at right now, that makes 100% sense. That's exactly what X-Force should be right now at the moment. So, alright, cool. I'm totally okay with this. However, there's a couple of things in here that I'm not really okay with. And one of them is just that I said, okay, it's saying up that that's what X-Force is. But I don't really know if X-Force is actually set up at the moment. This book didn't really do a good job of letting me know, okay, is X-Force the thing that I just described? Or does X-Force not technically exist yet in issue number 1 of X-Force, but you're now setting up what they're going to be? Because you've got like Sage and Black Tom, they're the people who are in charge of looking over Krakoa. They are the people who, they're basically the security system. Because since Black Tom can communicate with plant life, anything that tries to get onto the island, he can tell. And since Sage is all about information, she can process all this information, she can figure out anybody that's trying to work some kind of plan to get into Krakoa. So the two of them are talking back and forth, but you never really get a sense if they're actually tied to a team, or if they're just, you know, the two surveillance guys. But is, you know, are they actually on X-Force? Does X-Force actually exist at the moment? Yeah, this issue did not really do a good enough job of letting me know what exactly X-Force is at the moment, or at least what their status quo is at the moment, I should say. Also, another complaint that I have, but it's kind of like a half complaint, is the artwork. Because I actually really like the artwork in here. When you look at this artwork and you think about, okay, this is going to be for a darker, grittier team. This is for X-Force. Like, if you showed me this artwork and you told me this is for an X-Force book, I would go, that absolutely fits. That's dark, and that's got that dark, grisly tone that I expect from an X-Force book. But remember, they're on the island nation of Krakoa, where everything is bright and shiny, and there's certain members of this roster of X-Force that they're not, they're not Wolverine. They're not the dark, gritty characters. Like, you've got Jean Grey in there. And whenever it cuts to the bright, shiny stuff, it really kind of clashes with this dark, grisly artwork. When it cuts to, like, all the big plant life there on Krakoa, yeah, man, they draw it pretty well, but maybe it's just the colors, maybe it's something that the two of them are clashing in my mind, but it just doesn't really seem to fit with the tone of this book. And then you've got, Marvel Girl in there, flying in, which, by the way, I still really hate that she's calling herself Marvel Girl again. I also really hate that she went back to that outfit, which Jonathan Hickman actually joked about that outfit on Twitter, and I looked at the replies. Every single reply was, yes, for the love of God, get rid of that outfit. That outfit does not work. Yeah, man, I know like nothing about fashion, but I know that ain't it. I know that if you wanted to do a throwback to that old costume, you could have had someone come in here and redesign something in the spirit of that old costume. It does not fit these days. But it is a very bright, poppy, colorful uniform. When she flies in, being drawn in this darker, grislier tone, man, it does not work for me. It really is just two different things just clashing in my brain. Now, this is another book that I am going to get into a little bit of spoilers on, and I kind of have to, because what happens at the end of this issue is actually mentioned in Fallen Angels, and I was stunned at that. Because what happens at the end of this issue, I was like, oh yeah, that's going to be resolved by the beginning of the next issue, because no way is the thing that they had happen at the end of this issue something that actually happened. Like, that's a fake out. If I've ever seen a fake out, that was a fake out. But they mention it in here. They mention it over in Fallen Angels, and I couldn't help but look at that and go, okay, well now I've got a couple questions in here. At the end of this issue, you've got these soldiers flying into Krakoa, all gunned for Professor X. At the end of this thing, they shoot Professor X. And I don't mean like in the shoulder, I mean right there. You see Cerebro cracked and lying bloodied on the ground. That can't happen. No, that's not actually a thing. There's no way that actually happened. But as I mentioned, in Fallen Angels, they actually mention it, and they mention that it's like, no, the entire island is on lockdown right now because Professor X was murdered. And I just looked over at that and went, no, that was a fake out. Like, we all agree that's a fake out, right? Yeah, right. Why isn't anyone else saying right? Trust me, they definitely didn't just kill off Professor X in X-Force. I mean, they're saying up all this stuff. They've got this huge mystery surrounding him. They definitely did not kill him off. However, the fact that they mentioned it over in Fallen Angels does make me think, okay, my first thought was, well, that was like an illusion they created. I mean, he's Professor X. He can create, he can mess with people's minds. Clearly, he messed with their minds, so everybody thought that they ended up shooting him, but he was actually standing like 5 feet over. He's perfectly fine. But then they would not have mentioned it over in Fallen Angels. So I'm wondering, they did mention in House of X and Power of X, it is theoretically possible for Professor X to transfer his own mind into one of those clone bodies they're making. Maybe they actually did kill him, and maybe he's going to get cloned, and maybe that's going to tie in a little bit to the whole mystery of why we still haven't seen this part of his face since the beginning of Dawn of X and since the beginning of House of X and Power of X. There's too many of X's, I keep messing them all up. So maybe he actually did die, and they're going to try in the next issue to figure out a way to resurrect him without him being directly there to do the resurrection. It'll be interesting. I mean, like I said, if I had not read Fallen Angels, I would not have looked at that like a very good cliffhanger. I would have looked at that and went, that's a fake out. We all know it's a fake out. I'm looking at Fallen Angels and then mentioning this, and it actually does make me think, okay, well, it's not a fake out, so how are they going to work around that? Out of all the books that I've read so far, this is the one that has the cliffhanger that has me most interested in coming back for the next issue. And it's really surprising That's not even the cliffhanger itself. It's the fact that another book mentions it, which lets me know, oh, that's actually a thing. But speaking of Fallen Angels, time to move on to that book, the final Dawn of X series to come out, and I will let you guys know right now. This was my personal favorite of all the Dawn of X books. Not because I look at it and go, well, objectively, it is the best book, but because, as I said, all these new Dawn of X books, they have very different tones, and they're aimed at very different audiences. I'm in the audience this one is being aimed at. This was my personal favorite because of tone, execution, and introduction. Now what I mean by that is that this book had kind of a difficult job, that it had to set up Quanon, this character who was actually sort of Psylocke, kind of? Yeah, let's go ahead and address that. I said I was going to get into this. Psylocke has been a problematic character for a while, because Psylocke was a white lady running around in the body of an Asian woman. It was a white person literally putting on the face of a person of color. Yeah, that's not okay. That is not something that is okay in 2019. Wasn't really okay ever. We just now know not to do stuff like that. So they had to actually kind of fix this. And as I mentioned when these books were announced and when we found out that there was now going to be Betsy Braddock as her own thing, and there was now going to be Psylocke as her own thing, that the original Psylocke was coming back, I said I was 100% okay with that, because I know that there are people out there who love Betsy Braddock. They know her history, they know that character inside out, and those people, they might be kind of upset that she's no longer Psylocke, but for the vast majority of people out there who love Psylocke, they kind of love her just because she's a ninja with purple hair and purple energy daggers. So they don't really need the Betsy Braddock side of that character. However, that now means that we are going to be getting the Psylocke, who is the ninja with purple hair and purple energy daggers. We kind of need to re-establish her. We kind of need to reintroduce people to her. In fact, for many people out there, there's no re-involved. We just need to introduce people to her. This book constantly flashes back to her history, to her growing up, being trained to be a warrior since birth. But then it also introduces this secret that she has had, this thing that she was never allowed to go back to, and now that is playing into the entire premise of this series, the thing that they're going out there in search of. I love that, because you get an understanding for how she was raised. Okay, great, you establish that. But then you establish, okay, she had a secret. She has some big side to her past. She has something that she actually wants to fight for. A thing that she has to go out there that she's kind of been avoiding, but now she can't avoid it anymore. It adds so many dimensions to this character. There is a moment during a flashback where you see this particular thing being taken away from her, and man, the emotions in that scene were great. That one scene right there made me go, I am now deeply invested in this character and in her goals and in her mission. And the tone of this, yeah, this is a darker book. If you are one of those people who read X-Force and you just went, well, it's dark, but it's not really dark in the way that, you know, those older, like the Yost or the Remender X-Force books were. This one, it's not like those other X-Force books. It is entirely its own thing. But the level of darkness in it, yeah, it's around that same level. But whereas those ones were big, crazy, actiony, sci-fi darkness, this is like detective noir darkness. This series absolutely captures that feeling of, we gotta go and do some shady deals with some people in some back alleys right now. It nailed that tone, and I love that tone. Anytime that you can perfectly capture that tone, I'm all in. This book did that. And as I mentioned, execution, I have a few problems with this book in that there appears to be like two scenes that almost feel like they're missing. Like when Psylocke finds out that she needs to go, and she gets like this vision that tells her, you need to go, you need to look for this thing. She then goes to Magneto and says, I need to get off this island, I need to go and find this thing. And goes, the entire island's on lockdown because Professor X got murdered. She has to find a way to get off the island. She ends up teaming up with X-23, and they decide, okay, we're going to get off this island together. And then they're just off the island, but they were told by multiple different people there's no way to get off the island. So how do they do that? So yeah, it feels like there's a scene missing there, but there's also a moment early on where you see X-23 and Cable interacting, And then when Psylocke ends up recruiting X-23, she says, all right, but don't bring Cable along. He's not suited for this kind of a mission. So they don't bring Cable along. But at the end of this thing, Psylocke comes back with X-23 and with Cable, and they go to Mr. Sinister and said, listen, we need to form a team, and we need your help to get us to the places that we need to go, and some places that no one else can know that we're going to. Are you in? And I love that Mr. Sinister early in this said, no, I'm not interested in any of that. She came back here at the end and went, listen, I brought X-23 and Cable, and the moment that she mentioned Cable, Mr. Sinister's eyes just kind of like lit up a little bit, because Mr. Sinister has always been very fascinated in the Summer DNA, in the Scott Summer family timeline. He's always been interested in everybody with that DNA strand. So now you got Cable, his kid from the future. So, oh, you brought me a fine offering here. Okay, well, I'll work with you. I actually really enjoyed that. But still, X-23 was like, I don't want Cable working with us. And then at the end of this, they're working with Cable. It does feel like there was another scene that was just missing there. So when it comes to the actual pacing of the story itself, I did have a few problems in here. But when it comes to the pacing of the panel layout, oh my goodness. And I don't know how much of this was the writer, I don't know how much of this was the artist, or if it was just the two of them working hand in hand, but they nailed it. This book has a very quiet tone to it. This book has that tone where it's like, you could tell if this was a movie, there'd be no score, no soundtrack. If you hold on a character just saying nothing, you would just have the ambient sounds around you. That would be it. Like there's a moment where Psylocke and X-23 are on the beach and they're talking, and then in between each of their bits of dialogue, it just cuts to the moon. I love that. Because they're like on the beach, and in that moment, I could just hear like the silence between them as they're both contemplating what the other one said, as they're each thinking about their own past and everything that they have to do on this mission, and you can just hear in your head the waves crashing against the beach, and that's the only sound. I love that. They put me directly in that moment in this book. I think they nailed it. And there's only really like one action scene in this entire book, and it's not like something big crazy. It's not people flying around. It's, you know, you've got X-23 and you got Psylocke in there, so it's them just taking out some goons in a back room somewhere. But there is a moment, there's a shot of Psylocke jamming her psychic dagger into this person's head. Out the other side, butterflies just fly. It is a gorgeous shot. So yeah, that is my big #1 recommendation if you're into those types of books. Especially with the cliffhanger at the end where Psylocke basically says, we gotta get a team together so you know other characters are going to join this team. And I'm just looking at it like, oh man, you've got like all the villains and all the dirty dark characters from the X-Men's past all working hand in hand with you. Who are you going to recruit? I cannot wait to see what you're gonna do in this book. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. I will also say there are going to be some people who are upset with this book because X-23 does not act like any of the progression that she had as a character while she was Wolverine stuck around. She acts like X-23 did before she became Wolverine. And I am a little bit bummed about that, but I'll be real with you guys. I've been reading Marvel and DC comics for a long time now. I'm used to characters having all the progression that they had completely erased by a brand new writer coming on board. It doesn't even really faze me anymore at this point. It's just, it's depressing. It's disappointing. But it's just how it is. It's just how it works. It's a shame. So yeah, it just didn't bother me all that much just because I'm numb to that stuff at this point. But if you're not numb to it by now, you are going to be a little bit upset with that. But yeah, for me, personally, the tone of this book and the execution of it, it was everything that I could have wanted out of this issue. And again, just to reiterate, just to bring all this back home, that's kind of the magic of these 6 brand new X-Men books. No matter what you're into, one of these is going to work for you. No matter what type of books you enjoy reading, one of these is going to be a perfect match for you. So I would advise everybody out there to kind of listen to what I said today, listen to what other people have said about these books, listen to just what the tone of each of these books feel like they're going to be, and then figure out which of those feels like the book that's right for you. You do not need to come in here and read every single one of these brand new X-Men books out there. If you want to, great, because, hey man, the worst of them I thought was still okay. They're all very well written in and of themselves. So you can read all of them if you want, but it doesn't feel like you have to. It doesn't feel like every single one of these are important to the entire makeup of the new status quo of the X-Men. It feels like now you can just say, what X-Men book do I want to read? I'm going to read that X-Men book. And that's kind of great. It's kind of great that we have 6 brand new X-Men books out there, each aimed at a different audience, and you can just read them. No strings attached. Like a comic book. That's awesome. But thank you guys very much for tuning in. Let me know what was your favorite of the brand new Dawn of X books in the comments down below, or you can contact me on Twitter and Twitch at Professor Thorgy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.